We're past Labor Day, and that means back to school. We're using this opportunity to discuss the state of Jewish education. What was our experience like? What do we see with our kids' education? And how should we find value in our children learning about Judaism and Jewish life? I'm Avi Fongold. We are back to full strength. So along with Yedida Eisenstadt and Matthew Leibel, we are not in heaven. Rabbi Yedida. Trying to get you used to the term, you know. You can...
Yeah, it's sometimes I'm still like, are you talking to me? But yeah, I'm getting used to it.
Toda Rabbi Yedida. That's my little play on. There you go. You like that? No good. Welcome back.
But you guys, I missed you rabbis last week.
Yeah, we are firmly, even though technically we're still in meteorological summer, but we are in fall mode at this point, right? It's not just Elul, it's past Labor Day. What was your last hurrah of the summer, guys?
Last hurrah? I don't know.
We took the kids to Pearlstone Farm on Sunday for their flower festival, but really we went there to pick blueberries. We took the kids and they had all these wonderful activities set up. So my daughter and her friend made beautiful flower wreaths and they made little picture frames with dried flowers in them. And my boys made trail mix. And it was just a really nice afternoon on the farm. Charlie, one of my sons, was really upset that we didn't get to see any animals. So we'll have to rectify that sometime. And then yesterday afternoon, friends of ours in the neighborhood have somebody's grandparents bought them a good size personal bouncy house. So they set up the bouncy house in the backyard with some snacks and had people over so the kids could bounce their sillies out and adults could hang out. So that was yesterday afternoon, which was lovely. And kudos to those parents for helping us all get through those last few hours. Yeah, sent the kids to school this morning, and that is great.
What's the level of Labor Day as a thing in the States? I always got this impression that it wasn't as big a deal. In Canada, it feels like a legit holiday.
I forgot. I'm back in Montreal for the last time before all of the holidays, and I had an unstructured day yesterday. I was like, I'll get some shopping done. I'll go here, I'll go there. And then I forgot that everything is closed except for drugstores.
Yeah. The States is not like that, right? It's not not like that.
No,
Thanks.
because the States is a religion of commerce and everything is open so that Americans can spend money.
A religion of commerce. Interesting.
No, I think that for me, the reason it feels different here is that in Canada, growing up, school starts the day after Labor Day, but my kids started last week. So we're already back in a school routine and this is just a long weekend. It's the last hurrah of summer.
That's so weird to me, by the way. Just to interject, it's incredible. As a Canadian, I always found it weird when my cousins were back in school in August. It felt almost like a crime, like a government-sanctioned crime to send kids back to school before September.
The summer starts much earlier.
That argument always made sense, I guess, but even still, when I'm in it, it just it's so hollow. Hey, it's August 23rd. Open your books. Not a chance. You get away from me. So weird. So yeah, it does feel like that, getting ready for Yontif and this time of year. And I always say this, I always love that the Jewish year starts in the fall because it feels so much more meaningful than having a new year from December to January, where one day to the next feels really just kind of exactly the same. This is really like a time of year of, like you said, getting back into routine. And a lot of people, summer's over. But I don't know. I always really kind of, as much as I hate summer ending, I always really kind of like this time of the year. I get kind of jazzed about it. I don't know. It's there's a lot going on. It's cool.
I will say though that because I was a student and then I was teaching for all of those years, well into my 30s, adjusting to not being on an academic schedule was a big adjustment. Adjusting to being a grown-up with a job that wasn't on a semester schedule, it is a big adjustment. And now I'm on a school schedule with the kids, but also have a job. And that was really hard in the summer because camp days were so much shorter than school days. But I like them. And I'm also glad they're back in school. And they're also glad they're back in school.
It's funny you talk about my older son starts grade 1 tomorrow. It's weird, man. It's weird to have a kid going to grade 1. I know you guys have been there, but oh man, it's crazy.
Yeah. So speaking of school and education, I feel like, today's going to be a good time to take a moment and reflect back on where do you see in your personal milieu, whether you're the middle of Canada or you're in America, or you're like me, sort of in between and seeing a lot of both systems, where do you see the state of Jewish education right now?
I mostly went to public schools and went to seminary after high school in Israel, took a gap year, went to Midrashat Harova, and then in sort of formal academic university settings, pursued all kinds of different Jewish knowledge, which worked for me. And I probably already made this joke on this podcast that my PhD in Jewish studies is overcompensating for having gone to public school. But for my daughter, we've started our journey in the modern Orthodox day school for her, and she loves it. And I love it. I love how excited she is to come home, and she wants to talk about the Parsha with us. And around Chagim, she knows what's going on, and she's done all these art projects, and she's super prepared, and she has great questions. But I'll also say that we made that choice for her mostly for social reasons, which is to say that in my work, I did a bunch of reading a few years ago and talked about how education is really about enculturation, and the sort of social context in which I would like her to be most literate is that of like an Orthodox setting. I want her to be comfortable and literate in Orthodox spaces. So I've chosen that environment for her. And all the other stuff, the knowing people who aren't Jewish and about all those other cultures, we are adapting for by, having people who are not Jewish in our home and going places and exposure and friendships and the neighborhood we live in. So it's just a choice of where the emphasis is. And I would much rather somebody else teach my kid the Jewish literacy skills. But that's just the choice that we've made, right? Like I would rather her be socialized in sort of a more strictly sort of from observant environment and have us sort of on the liberal side of that than be pulling her from a more community pluralistic context to the right.
So it's very interesting that you say that, because it's something that I've felt for a very, very long time. I know growing up, I went to a very Haredi yeshiva, and, you weren't even supposed to go to movies, let alone talk to like girls and, have all of that. But it always occurred to me that the one strength that I had of that education was that I sort of like got the things that I could never get from a more modern or a more community-based day school in terms of like Jewish knowledge and Jewish skills, and that I was able to then have family life that was, no, but we do things a little bit differently. We're able to do this. We're able to do that. It's important that you go to college. It's important to get university education. All of that stuff was there. And I always felt like that was going to be my value, which was it's easier to tell you to deconstruct, so to speak, a more Haredi lifestyle, for lack of a better way of approaching it. And
but because you started with it, right? Because you had it at the beginning. It's like tight at the beginning, and you can loosen it as you go on. Yeah,
exactly. Then having to go to your kids and sort of say, I know you are in an all Jewish day school, but most of your classmates don't keep kosher, but we do keep kosher. And then they have to like fight the fact that they're actually doing something that feels so different and so strict, more strict than everybody else in their school or in their grade or in their friend group. That makes it that much more difficult. And I always believe that. But like, I think Jewish day school is, or Jewish schooling in general, Jewish education is always like a set of choices that we make. And like, what is the nature of those choices and how we do things is like a big part of our Jewish life.
I have this theory that if it costs nothing, wouldn't everybody just sign their kids up for Jewish day school? Like, isn't the cost the bigger threat, the bigger reason why people talk?
I think you'd be surprised.
You think so?
I think you'd be surprised about that. I think that there are people that it's not about the cost, because there are people that send their kids to very, very expensive non-Jewish private schools, and Jewish day school would cost a lot less, but they firmly believe that this is the most important thing to get them a head start, is to have like a world-class education.
It's really interesting you say that, because I think about me. I didn't have the Yadina, your joke is so funny. Your PhD to overcome going to public school. I think that's so funny. Like, I went grade 1 to 12 in the Jewish day school system in Winnipeg. I'm kind of tough on my friends who I graduated with. Like I graduated grade 12 with a class of 23. And I don't know. I have a lot of trouble identifying like what's the benchmark for evaluating these folks? Like if I called up a random person from my grade 12 class and said, when's Shavuot? Do you guys know my whole thing about like people don't know when Shavuot is. I'm not positive that they would know. I think they would know where to look to find the answer, and I think they would at least very well know what Shavuot is. Like, they wouldn't have a lot of a blank stare that I kind of get from some people. But I do sometimes, like for me, I went and became a radio host. Didn't need a Jewish education to do that. But I started working at the synagogue when I was 19. Like, I had a hands-on education at the synagogue that just built on top of what I learned. I learned such a baseline, grade 1 to grade 12, but I feel like so much of the stuff I got in my professional life with education, and I didn't see any of my friends getting that. And if you pay a boatload of money and you get to grade 12, community is great, social implications are great, but I don't know, like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that it made them scholars, Jewish scholars, or maybe I'm being unfair. Maybe it gave them the framework, a baseline to become scholars much more easily than the average Jewish person who didn't. But I always felt like, we weren't Hebrew literate. Like, a lot of those people wouldn't be able to converse in very strong Hebrew conversation. They're not Torah scholars. They're probably Zionists, but
I think you've also just put your finger on something else that's really important, which is the experiential piece. And the experiential piece can obviously happen in summer camp, and a lot of people get the experiential piece in the variety of Jewish summer camps, but I think it's also the home, right? So growing up, having gone to public school and seeing my father put tefillin on every single morning that he was supposed to in the living room, had an impact on me, right? And living the Chagim and keeping Shabbat, even though I went to public school. So there are a lot of different ways to do this. And like the day school model that we now have is relatively new in the scheme of Jewish history, right? Like most Jewish life, practice, ritual comes from a home environment more so than a school environment. So like you can learn how to daven standing beside your parents in shul and have that experience, or you can learn it in school, or you can learn it in camp if that's something you want to learn how to do.
I think you speak to school administrators, they know this like instinctively, but a lot of parents don't necessarily stop to think what they're actually trying to get out of a Jewish day school education. And is it the knowledge or is it the culture? And, you know, here's a choice that I hear a lot of parents make. And I actually think that most parents make the wrong choice. It's if you have two different schools to send your kid to, are you sending your kid to a Jewish elementary school or a Jewish high school if you're only picking one? And most parents that I know pick Jewish elementary school. And I think it's actually the wrongest mistake because of both culture and knowledge. Because at the Jewish elementary level, right, most of the stuff that you could learn, that you're learning about Judaism, what the Parsha is and what the calendar is, most parents can actually do that with culture at home, with doing the basic stuff around that. Whereas high school is where the knowledge really jumps up and being able to say, and most parents can't teach their kid how to learn a Mishnah, how to learn a piece of Talmud, how to understand deep Jewish history and all of that. So there's the age of the piece of the knowledge. And then there's the culture, which is, oh, I want my kid to be in a Jewish environment and have all their Jewish friends and all that. And I'm like, yeah, that works at the elementary level. But if you're at the high school level in a public school, what ends up happening is that you go to university and the first week that you're there, you're not thinking to go do something Jewish. Whereas if you graduated from a Jewish day school in 12th grade, you go into college, one of the first things you do is you look out for the Hillel. You're looking out for the Chabad. You're getting yourself involved in something Jewish. And that doesn't happen nearly as often if you're going to a public or a private non-Jewish
that's
high
such a
school.
great way of kind of putting it all together, Avi. It's like, and I don't want to get too carried away because I don't know a lot of other Jewish schools outside of what we have in Winnipeg. But I have had lots of questions for a long time about how the Judaic side of things is taught. And like what you were just saying, what is the goal? Someone once said to me, I feel like the goal should be that if my kid flew to Israel and got out of the plane, got out of the airport and got into a cab, he'd be able to use his Hebrew to get to a restaurant, to order some food, to go to his hotel, like basic working thing. I said, well, the way I learned Hebrew, that wasn't that. At that school. I graduated in 03, so a lot could have changed, but I just wasn't.
Can I tell my favorite story about Jewish day school kids and a cab?
Sure. That
kids got off the plane and they go to the information desk and they ask for where the cab stand is. How do you say cab in Hebrew?
Monit.
Yeah. Or
Sherut.
Sheirut. So they asked Eifo HaSheirutim because that's what they thought is the plural. And the guy not understand, like clearly just hearing a very valid question goes, like varim po, right? And they look at him and they're like, Lolo, anu rotzim leholchim LaSheirutim beyacha, which for those of you who don't,
we want to go together.
We want to go to the bathroom together. That's a day school education does not save you from that type of,
if you
indignity.
Can't handle that. What's your Jewish education doing for you? Unless that wasn't the goal or the expectation, right?
I think that's a silly goal. I say respectfully. Like, you can go to Israel and get around in English, right? If Hebrew is a value in itself, which arguably it is, then great. There's lots of different kinds of Hebrew to know, depending on what you want to use the language for. I don't know. To me, that's not the goal of a Jewish education.
What is the goal? I want to know what is the goal then.
So I think Jewish literacy, which includes Hebrew literacy and, ability to understand, I think prayers are really important, but learning modern Hebrew isn't really going to help you read a parak of a chapter of the Torah in its original. So knowledge of the Jewish year, knowledge of Jewish rituals, and hopefully also like positive feeling towards it, right? Like my kid goes to a Shabbos party on Friday afternoons and she's really excited about Shabbat, and great. That's really important to me that she has that positive feeling. It's been interesting to me to watch some of the traffic in a mom's group that I'm in on WhatsApp, because there's a lot of discussion about the anti-Semitism in the public schools, which changes the topic a little bit. But it's interesting. On college campuses, I hear that a lot of students are seeking out Hillels increasingly for Jewish identification. And also that we know parents are changing the schools that their kids go to so that their kids can feel safer and more comfortable and not have to deal with anti-Semitic garbage in public schools. And I think that that's good and valuable. But I also think that like the positive feeling and the general comfort level with the tradition is a really important priority.
There's that other piece which we have mentioned here, the culture, the community, the social aspects of Jewish day school. And while, Matthew, I'm willing to bet that your parents would not be super happy knowing that, you have Jewish knowledge, but a lot of the parents of the kids in your class who may not have the same level of Jewish knowledge might be disappointed. I bet you most of them are probably pretty happy with the fact that their kids are probably in a socially Jewish environment, whatever, to some degree or another, probably because of the fact that they went to Jewish day school and Jewish high school.
I think so. I think you guys are right. I think that is, but then does it matter what they're learning, or does it matter that they're just in Jewish school with Jews and that there's like Jewish?
So I personally think it's both.
Yeah.
But look, there's a new nominally Jewish day school that's opening up in Chicago. And their aim is purely to compete with the top level prep schools, but to be in a Jewish environment. And they're doing like a really basic Jewish education. And the rest is just, we want our kids to be in a Jewish environment amongst other Jews. That's the thing that we care about. And for them, that's important. And if you look at there's other places where content is the only thing that matters. And there are schools that cater to that.
You find the balance.
I also want to make a plug for kids seeking it out on their own. Like my stepson, of whom I'm very proud, arrived in yeshiva yesterday for a year. And he went to like a private, not Jewish school in Nashville, which he'd been in, I think, since 6th grade. So he'd been in the Jewish school through 5th and then transferred in this other school. And he got to Binghamton last year and met a bunch of kids who, had fabulous experiences on their gap years and decided that he wanted to go to Israel and learn for a year. And I think there are a million different models for this. And the skills and the knowledge, I think, are even more easily acquired by an adult who's actually interested in acquiring that knowledge. So, the kid who's resentful that they're in a dual curriculum and they're not really interested in learning Talmud, that kid's never going to really want to learn Talmud if they have it forced down their throat. But the kid who becomes thirsty for it and has to go seek it out on their own when they're mature enough to like buckle down and learn for hours a day, good on them. Okay,
so I have this I've got like a 20-year perspective on training 12-year-olds and 12-year-olds, sometimes 11-year-olds, I guess, for the girls, for their bar and bat mitzvah, right? And in Winnipeg, you basically got two options if you want your kid to have a Jewish education up to that bar and bat mitzvah age. One is the Grey Academy, which is a Jewish day school, which is the double curriculum, Hebrew language, definitely the calendar, definitely identity, Israel, Zionism, all of these things. The other school is a Hebrew bilingual program that's existed for a few decades in the public school system. It's where my son's starting grade 1. And I've seen kids come through both. Over a 20-year period, the teachers change, things go through cycles. I found it very interesting that if you look at the average kid who comes from either school, the ability to read Hebrew, and I get that it's biblical Hebrew, but just the ability to read Hebrew, way down 20 years. I guess what I'm trying to say is if you don't have any formal Jewish education, what I'm seeing is, I'm not judgmental, but I'm not seeing a ton in the home, because I see these choices as a reflection of the home. If you're going to a different school, it's probably because the thought in the home is that the Hebrew isn't that important. And if the thought in the home is that the Hebrew isn't that important, what other things are not that important? It's not that the families don't feel Jewish or feel connected. It's not that they don't promote these sorts of things. As I always say to people, what do you do that's Jewish? It's not enough to just say, I'm Jewish, I love being Jewish, I feel Jewish. It's like, what do you do that is an expression of that Jewishness? What do you do? And if you don't read Hebrew, if you don't have these, I don't know. I don't see it in the same way that I see they do hockey or they do dance. They do these things that express their identity.
Matthew, it sounds like for a lot of these kids, you are their primary Jewish educator.
I don't like the pressure, but I'm part of the team.
I'm observing that possibility.
I'll take it. I mean, I'm the one telling the story, so maybe I'm very misguided. But yeah, I'm part of the team, sure.
One question I have for you is what sticks? And besides for preparing these kids for their, B'nai Mitzvah, what are your priorities? What do you want them to leave the experience with?
I turn this on them. I think I turned to them. For 17 years, I was the trope teacher. It was Mercha Tibcha Munachet Nachta. If anyone knows any of this stuff, week after.
Do you have that? Is that your tramp stamp, Matthew? Do you have Mercha Tibcha Munachet Nachta?
I've got a delicately placed pazer somewhere that I'm not going to tell you anything.
Oh,
a little trope humor. That was it. And it was teaching the Haftorah, teaching the Torah. And then usually they would meet with the rabbi and work on the speech. Well, now I'm the rabbi. And so I have other people who do the tutoring. And when we meet and have our lessons, I would say to them, we obviously need to write a speech. We need to get into what your parsha is about. But before we do any of that, you actually have to answer me. What do you want out of your bar mitzvah? What do you want out of your bat mitzvah? And, when you're an adult, your expectation for an answer from a 12 or a 13-year-old might be a little bit too high. You have to kind of be prepared that this is the first time they've really gotten into this sort of existential thinking. But that's what I'm always looking to see, is that this becomes a positive experience. I heard too many people when I was a young tutor who hated their bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah learning. It's not enough to just say, Ki Teitzei talks about this, and it made me think of this in my life. That's a great start. That's always kind of the goal. So I guess for me, it's more about something lasting, something meaningful.
To be fair, I think you're hitting on something that's really, really unspoken and should be, is that we really have to totally rethink the bar mitzvah experience. And if you ask me, completely eliminate Torah reading. If you want to do something liturgical, lead a service, right? Learn Musaf or Shafri, because that's going to be way more useful to you and way easier to learn, and take the rest of that time.
Friday night or a Shiva minyan?
Yeah, or Kabbalat Shabbat or whatever it is. Yeah. Do all of those things and then spend time on actually learning Jewish stuff, right? I tell couples when I do the weddings and we get into Jewish life stuff, and I say, a Jewish wedding is one day, but a Jewish marriage is for forever. And of course, Edina's giving me that, and I say, I have seen so many couples when they go and say, oh, don't worry, when our kids are going to be old enough, we're going to do the Shabbat. We're going to do Friday night dinner. I really think it's important for them to see it. And I'm like, if you're not doing it now, your 5-year-old knows that it's fake. And so you have to do whatever it is that you care about as Jewish life, start it now. You
start that at a young age, they just kind of grow up with it, and it's a part of the family. It's a part of the life, right? So That's a really good point. I think that's great advice that you give people. Start now. Don't say you're going to do it one day, because you'll never do it one day.
The first 5 to 10 pages of Emily Oster's The Family Firm book. She's an economist at Brown. She's really famous. She's written a bunch of books. Anyway, one of them is called The Family Firm. And she talks about how early on, a couple really needs to decide what their family's priorities are, right? If your kid is going to be a competitive swimmer, then your kid's going to have swim meets every day after school. So that is a competing priority with the family having dinner every night together. So either your kid's going to be a competitive swimmer, or you can prioritize family dinner every night, but you can't really do both.
Right.
In my relationship, it was obvious, Shabbat, we were on the same page about Shabbat. And that made it really easy. When I was dating people who were not on the same page about Shabbat, it was really hard to envision what my life was going to look like. So Judaism-wise, it makes sense that, you have to decide really early on, when you're picking a partner, what you want your life to look like Jewishly.
I have one last question for you, because you're spending money finally for the first time in a long time on Jewish day school. What's that vibe like for you? And do you feel like you're getting your money's worth? I mean, it's only been not even any time, but do you feel like the value is going to be there? And you where are the things that you think are broken in that system, just having been around?
At this juncture, I love my kids' school, and I love her teachers, and I'm loving the community and the facility, and I'm really into it. It is a huge sum of money. And we have 2 more coming up. You do not get a discount if you have a twin. And we're making major lifestyle changes in order, hopefully, we don't actually know that we're going to be able to swing it and be able to swing it for, the 13 years of school that we're hoping to be able to do this for 3 kids and then send them to college. So I'm just at the front end of that, and it's going to be really hard. Do I think it will be worth it? I hope so. She comes home Friday afternoon and wants to make challah with me, and she's really excited about it. But, would it be the same effect, right? She was just in Chabad camp for 9 weeks, and that was great too, right? My kids are finally big enough that they can actually help make Shabbat. And when they come and they want to help, we try to say yes, even when that makes our lives harder. Would it be the same if, she was just getting it at home and wasn't getting it at school? And I don't think so, but this is an experiment. My parents also had me in day school until the end of 3rd grade and then made a different choice. So we will see.
Value it's so hard for me, because if your kid comes home buzzing about really anything Jewish, isn't that like those old MasterCard commercials where it was all the things that it costs, and in the end it was seeing a game with your dad, priceless?
Yeah, I remember those.
Isn't it priceless when your kid comes home and is buzzing about
Totally.
Judaism, and you didn't do that, but you get that, and then you get to build it up?
In theory, yeah, but wait till you're 10 years in, having spent tens of thousands of dollars every year.
So again, where's the tipping point?
There's a limit to that priceless. It starts.
That's what I mean. Is this how it comes back to one of the things we're talking about? Every family's answer about value is probably going to be different, because it is so subjective, is such a swing. And that's my fear. You got a couple of kids, 2, you got 3, and 13 years. The return has to be more than just wanting to make challah, I guess.
And absolutely, yes, it does. There will also be textual learning. God help me. But right, I mean, one question is: are there other ways to accomplish this that are more economical? And that is a totally valid question. And I think my parents did it. Kudos to them. I know they're listening. They're super proud of me. But, there were other things that were hard. And I had tutors on top of school in elementary school, and some of them were better than others. The major takeaway from that for me was that my parents prioritized Jewish learning, not the substance. I still hate learning Pirkei Avot because I'm that's what I learned from my bat mitzvah, and I never want to look at it again. Yeah, but I think the message that you send to your kids about Jewish learning, however you do it, is it's the thing that you teach them.
So many people love Pirkei Avot. I just quoted at a wedding. Acquire for yourself a friend.
Wah, 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 wah. Sorry, I shouldn't do that.
So much for that.
Look, I have so many thoughts on the funding models, and I think that so many of them are fundamentally broken. But I think that nothing is going to change until something drastic like really happens. Like until you have like, I don't know, until some religious mom gets outed for having an OnlyFans just so that she could pay for her kid's Jewish day school education, right? That's going to be the thing that'll wake everybody up and say, "Oh,
you spewed that idea
that'll
too quickly to have just thought of that." That is something that you've been.
I don't know.
But at the same time,
on that note,
no. But hang on. But just quickly to put a bow in it,
it's a huge expense.
It's not obviously enough yet for people. If you're telling me that, I still think that cost dissuades a group of people. Maybe not the big earning families who are choosing between a Jewish private school and another private school. But if you're choosing between public school, if Winnipeg's on the low end of it, and it's like $15,000 a year in Winnipeg, and that's the low end. I mean, the world is getting expensive, and that includes everything, and apparently Jewish education too.
Well, let's put our parents' money where our mouths are and go to textual healing and see what we got out of this.
Textual healing. It's time for some textual healing.
Let's get biblical. Tell me a parsha, and we'll make it physical. Textual healing. It's time for some textual healing.
Yedida, you got some textual healing for us?
I do.
I have something with Rashi. I was going to bring in a Rashi.
Oh.
Just to see if I did it wrong.
Okay, good, because I'm not today for the first time. No, today for something totally different. I have a little nugget from Rashi's grandson, Rashbam. And it's on Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 23, which talks about how if the court puts somebody to death for some kind of capital offense, and they do it by hanging, but I think that maybe they hang the body anyway, no matter how they kill them, that the corpse cannot be left hanging overnight. And I was thinking about that this verse was resonating with me because I just finished reading a few days ago Elizabeth Brunig's cover story in The Atlantic from a few months ago, Witness, where she talks about how she travels all over the United States and witnesses states putting capital offenders maybe to death. This Rashbam really resonated because he talks about that the reason why you can't leave the body hanging overnight is because people who see the bodies will come to curse the legal system, sort of by association, also God. Seeing any corpse hanging that has been killed by the court will lead a person to actually have problems with the legal system. So I thought that was a really interesting take because I sort of found myself in that space after reading this essay.
So that great verse, that leads right into the next chapter, chapter 22. We're in Ki Tetzei, right, in Deuteronomy. And I love the beginning of 22. If you see your fellow Israelites' ox or sheep gone astray, do not ignore it. You must take it back to your peer. If your fellow Israelite does not live near you, or you do not know who the owner is, you shall bring it home. It shall remain with you until your peer claims it. Then you shall give it back. You shall do the same with the person's donkey, the person's garment, and so too shall you do with anything that your fellow Israelite loses and you find. You must not remain indifferent. These are like the moments, there are moments in the Torah where I'm like, oh man, this is a tough one. We have to give context and I'm a little bit ashamed. This is one of those moments that's the complete opposite. I love that this is ancient. I love that this is baked in. I love that there's like, you're not allowed to remain indifferent. And the Rashi that I was reading, Yedida, was that the verb, if I have it right, the verb is like one of those reflexive verbs. Vihita lamta, I think is the right verb. And it's this idea that literally to conceal yourself, to shut your own eyes as if you do not see it, right? And come on, everyone can relate to this. Do you look the other way as if you didn't see it? This obligation that, oh, you saw it, now you have something that you need to do. It's like a conscience mitzvah, right? I love this idea of there being a conscience mitzvah. There's a few things in Ki Tetzei, especially at the beginning, that can be very tough to relate to. If you take a woman captive. Not something that I've really ever expected would be in my life. But to me, that's a really, really nice moment. A really nice moment in the Torah. Do not remain indifferent. Bring it home. Take care of it and give it back to your friend. Like that's That's great. There's a curb, I think, about that too, where David Schwimmer loses Larry David's watch or something like that. And anyway, I like that moment in the Parsha. It's a nice nugget for me.
Kitetse, I don't know if you know this, but Kitetse has the most mitzvot of any other Parsha in the Torah.
I think, yeah.
There's 74 mitzvot. So when you have a bar mitzvah boy, or girl, what a bat mitzvah girl, you want to teach them. This is like, and a lot of them are very difficult. And I want to highlight the one that most people see as the most difficult, which again shows up right away at the beginning, and it's the ben sorer umoreh, right? The rebellious son. If a child is so rebellious that they're not listening to their parents, you're allowed to put them to death for the future sins that they are going to have. And the Talmud has a whole discussion back and forth about things that have to be ticked off of a list in order for that to happen. And then there's a discussion of whether it ever happened. And then one rabbi goes and says, no, of course it happened. I sat on the grave of one of the, of a ben sorer or moreh. And so you get to the contemporary era, and my favorite idea about this comes from Rabbi Joseph B. Soloveitchik, who wrote in Halachic Man, right, where he talks about the nature and the ethic of halacha, where he goes and says, it doesn't matter if this happened or if this never happened, right? Because halacha doesn't need to have happened in order for it to teach you what the ethic behind it is, right? It is there to teach you this principle that if something like this should ever happen, we should examine ourselves so strongly to understand where we have gone wrong. And what I like about that idea is if you take a step back, a lot of people have a hard time with a lot of things in this week's portion. And the upshot of this is to say no. Kitetse is saying these are objective ethical principles. You may not want to do this, or you may not say, but you ask yourself, take that step back and ask yourself, where are we? What is going on in this principle, in this law that I can learn from, and that Judaism does believe in some set of objective truths and ethics and values. Great episode. Thank you so much. Let's reconvene in a week from now. Thank you for listening to Not in Heaven this week. Our producer and editor is Zachary Kaufman. Michael Freeman is the executive producer. To catch every episode, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support our show, consider making a donation to the CJN at thecjn.ca/donate.